I thought her directness was sexy. She wasn't afraid to speak her mind, and I used to respect that. Now, I realize her boldness was just a smokescreen for something much darker. Our relationship started off hot and heavy. We had sex almost every day in our first year. I was convinced we were soulmates because our connection seemed so damn real. But about a year ago, something felt off. Tiffany started acting distant. It was subtle stuff. She spent more time working late, her phone was always on silent, and she'd lock it every time she set it down. I tried to dismiss my suspicions as paranoia. After all, we'd been together for years, and I never pictured her being that type of person. But looking back, there were warning signs everywhere. She started criticizing me a lot, my job, my habits, even the way I talked to her parents. She got unnecessarily defensive whenever I asked about her day. Little fights escalated for no reason, and I'd catch her in small lies all the time. At the time, I didn't want to believe anything was seriously wrong. I chalked it up to stress, or maybe I thought I was messing up somehow. I was wrong, big time. Tiffany was more than just moody or stressed. She was hiding something that would flip my entire life upside down. And when I finally got the answers I was looking for, let's just say it set off a chain of events I wouldn't have believed if I hadn't lived through them myself. I remember the exact moment it all came crashing down. I was at home on a Saturday night, waiting for Tiffany to get back from girls' night with her friend Ashley. That particular evening, her phone was still paired with the Bluetooth in our living room, something she'd apparently forgotten. She'd already left, so I decided to watch a movie. That's when a text message popped up on the TV screen, right there in huge letters, "I miss our wild sex. When can we do it again?" It was from some guy named Josh. At first, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My brain kept trying to protect itself, like maybe it was some kind of messed up spam text. But no, this was definitely personal. My stomach dropped. My throat went dry, and I stood frozen in my own living room. If I had any lingering doubts about Tiffany's behavior before, that text made everything crystal clear. I wanted more evidence before going nuclear, so I did what any suspicious spouse might do, I grabbed her laptop. She was dumb enough to use the same password for everything, her old college mascot, Bulldog 123. Within seconds, I was in her email and social media accounts. Sure enough, I found a treasure trove of screenshots and messages, words like "baby," "I love you," and explicit details about their hookups. It was a whole separate life I knew nothing about. I didn't realize my hands were shaking until I tried to set the laptop down and nearly dropped it. My entire body felt hot, like my blood was boiling. Every message I read chipped away at the love I once felt for her. I thought back to all those times she'd left the house early or came home late. All the times she told me she was too tired for sex. All the little lies she'd told with that smug look on her face. I found messages from her lover, Josh, describing how they couldn't wait to see each other again. And the most stomach-turning part? She'd told him things about me, how I wasn't exciting enough in bed, how I didn't understand her, all this bullshit that made me feel like a clueless side character in my own marriage. I closed the laptop, my head pounding. I knew I had to confront her, but first, I needed a plan. I couldn't just fly off the handle. I'm not a small guy, anger can make me do stupid things. And what I'd just seen. It called for retribution on a level I never thought I'd consider. But I also knew this was going to get complicated, especially if I lost control. I waited. I didn't text her. I just sat there in the dark, letting the rage seep into my bones. It was like a fuse had been lit inside me. I was counting the minutes until she walked through that door, phone in hand, probably smiling at some disgusting message from Josh. Little did she know, her entire world was about to explode, right along with mine. Tiffany got home around midnight, looking all giddy like she'd just had the time of her life. The second she walked in, though, she must have sensed something was off because I was sitting at the kitchen table with the laptop open. I had all the messages pulled up, plain as day. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest, but on the surface, I stayed calm, almost too calm. She tried to play it cool, rolling her eyes at me like I was an annoying child. "What are you doing up so late?" she asked, her voice dripping with fake concern. I stood up, motioned for her to come look at the screen. She took one glance at the laptop and blanched. Her face went from smug to panicked in a heartbeat. "You went through my stuff," she practically screeched. I let out a laugh, dry, humorless. "Yeah, Tiff, I went through your stuff. But that's not the issue here, is it?" I pointed to the messages where she and Josh waxed poetic about their wild sex, how he couldn't wait to get in her pants again, and all those explicit details that made me feel like I was going to puke. Her excuses tumbled out like a broken faucet. She insisted it was just flirting, that nothing serious happened, all that usual bullshit. When I didn't budge, she flopped into some crocodile tears. "I'm sorry, Brad. I never wanted to hurt you," she whined. Then she started throwing the blame around. She blamed me for not paying attention to her, for being boring in bed, for not taking her on expensive vacations like Josh did. Next, she had the nerve to say I was invading her privacy, as if that was somehow the real crime here. I was stunned at how quickly she pivoted from cowering to full-on attacking me. I called her out on the messages I'd read, stuff about how she wished she'd never married me, how she told Josh I was a loser with no future. I'll never forget the way her eyes narrowed when I brought that up. It was like she was more pissed that I knew about it than ashamed she actually said it. She tried to spin a sob story about how she felt ignored and underappreciated. Yeah, because I was working overtime to pay our mortgage and keep food on the table. She even brought up that she wanted to have more adventures, and I was apparently holding her back. The conversation escalated until she screamed, "You can't prove I slept with him," as if that somehow took away the betrayal of everything I'd read. I lost it then. I slammed my fist on the table, startling both of us. "Don't treat me like I'm stupid, Tiffany," I said through gritted teeth. I'd never raised my voice to her like that before. She tried to shrink away, still playing the victim, but deep down I knew she was just scrambling to cover her tracks. That's when I realized, with blinding clarity, she wasn't the person I thought I married. She was a bitch who'd gladly lie to my face if she thought it'd save her skin. I told her we were done, no discussions, no half-assed apologies. She started to cry again, but I was past caring about her tears. I didn't want to hear any more excuses. I stormed out of the kitchen, leaving her alone with her fake sobs. Truth be told, my anger was so intense I had to physically remove myself before I did something I'd regret. But I knew this was just the beginning. There was no going back now. After storming out of the kitchen, I found myself pacing the hallway, trying to process everything that had just happened. My mind was a whirlwind of emotions: betrayal, anger, sadness, and a deep sense of loss. It felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me, leaving me suspended in a void where everything I thought was real was suddenly shattered. For the next few days, I was a shell of myself. I couldn't focus at work, kept replaying the confrontation with Tiffany over and over in my head. Every little thing reminded me of her lies and deceit. I started pulling away from friends and family, not wanting to burden them with my crap, or maybe, just maybe, not wanting anyone else to see how much my life was falling apart. But anger was the dominant emotion. It consumed me, turning every thought into a burning desire for revenge. I couldn't stand the idea of Tiffany getting away with betraying me like that. The more I thought about Josh, the more I realized how much he meant to her. He wasn't just some random guy, he was her lover, the one she chose over our marriage. And that needed to be punished. I began researching ways to expose Tiffany's affair without her noticing. Hacking seemed too obvious, and I didn't want to leave any digital traces that could lead back to me. Then I stumbled upon some darker corners of the internet, places where people shared tips on everything from psychological manipulation to more sinister methods of retribution. It was there that the idea of making Josh disappear crossed my mind. Not in a direct way, but something that would ensure he could never hurt Tiffany again. The thought was terrifying, but it felt like the only way to regain some semblance of control. I started planning meticulously, every detail calculated to avoid suspicion. I knew it was risky, but the more I plotted, the more justified I felt. Tiffany had destroyed our marriage, and maybe, just maybe, I deserved to watch her suffer the same way. But deep down, there was a nagging voice of doubt. Was I really capable of going through with something so extreme? Part of me wanted to walk away, to find peace and move on from the wreckage Tiffany had left behind. But another part, fueled by rage and a desire for vengeance, wouldn't let me rest until I saw her pay for her betrayal. Sleep became elusive. I lay awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wrestling with my conscience. The lines between right and wrong blurred as my obsession with revenge took hold. I started distancing myself even more, pretending everything was fine while planning my next move. It was like living two lives, one where I was the devastated husband, and the other where I was a man scorned, ready to tear everything apart. Then came the unexpected twist. One evening, while I was finalizing my plans, I received a call from Ashley, Tiffany's so-called friend. She sounded frantic, almost scared. "Brad, you need to talk to me," she said. "It's about Josh." My heart skipped a beat. What did she want? Was Josh in some kind of trouble? My mind raced with possibilities. Could this be an opportunity to further my revenge, or was something else going on? I agreed to meet her at a local cafe, my mind buzzing with anticipation and anxiety. Little did I know, this meeting would set off a chain of events that would spiral out of my control, pushing me further down a path I never intended to follow. The revenge I sought was about to take a life of its own, and there was no turning back. Meeting Ashley was the last thing I expected that night. I drove to the cafe she suggested, my mind a chaotic mix of curiosity and suspicion. What could she possibly want to talk about regarding Josh? After all, if Tiffany and Josh were the main players in this sordid affair, why involve her? The cafe was quiet, almost eerily so for a Saturday evening. I spotted Ashley sitting in a corner, nervously tapping her fingers on the table. She looked different from the bubbly friend Tiffany portrayed to the outside world. Her usual bright demeanor was replaced with a haunted expression. I slid into the seat across from her. "Ashley, what's going on? Why are you calling me here?" She took a deep breath, her eyes darting around as if she feared being overheard. "Brad, I didn't want to involve you, but Josh is in serious trouble." My heart pounded. What kind of trouble? Ashley glanced around again before leaning in closer. "It's not just about the affair. Josh got mixed up with some dangerous people, gangsters. He borrowed money he couldn't pay back, and now they're after him. He's scared, Brad. Really scared." I felt a surge of conflicting emotions. Part of me wanted to dismiss her, to see this as another twisted layer of Tiffany's lies. But another part, the part still reeling from betrayal, saw an opportunity. If Josh was in trouble, maybe this was my chance to finally make him disappear. "Why come to me?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Ashley looked desperate. "Because Tiffany told me you might be able to help. She said you're the only one who can fix things." I clenched my fists, anger bubbling to the surface. "So, Tiffany used me to bail Josh out? What the hell is going on here?" She nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "I didn't know how to tell you. I thought if Josh got what he needed, he might leave Tiffany and everything would go back to normal. But now it's gotten out of hand." I took a moment to process her words. If Josh was indeed in deep with these gangsters, then any move could have serious consequences. But the idea of Josh being vulnerable, of having leverage over him, was tempting. "All right," I said finally. "Tell me everything you know about these guys and what they want." Ashley detailed the situation. Josh had borrowed a substantial amount of money from a local crime syndicate, promising to repay it quickly. When he failed to deliver, they demanded immediate repayment, threatening violence if he didn't comply. Josh had tried to back out, but that only made things worse. As she spoke, a plan began to form in my mind. If Josh was desperate, maybe I could use that to my advantage. Maybe there was a way to ensure he couldn't come back to hurt Tiffany, or me, without drawing too much attention. But another thought nagged at me: getting involved with gangsters could drag me into a world I never wanted to be part of. The stakes were higher than I'd ever imagined, and the line between right and wrong was blurring rapidly. Ashley finished her story, looking hopeful yet terrified. "Please, Brad, I don't know what else to do. Josh is running out of time." I nodded slowly, the weight of the situation settling in. "I need to think about this. I'll see what I can do." As I left the cafe, my mind was racing. This was the unexpected twist I didn't see coming, a chance to turn the tables, but also a path that could lead to even darker places. Little did I know, my decision that night would set off a chain of events far more twisted and dangerous than I could have ever imagined. After leaving the cafe, I couldn't shake the conversation with Ashley from my mind. Josh was tangled up with dangerous people, and here I was, considering getting involved in something way over my head. But revenge was still simmering beneath the surface, and the idea of using Josh's predicament to my advantage was tempting. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind was racing with possibilities. I kept replaying Tiffany's lies and how she'd manipulated both me and Josh. If Josh was already in deep, maybe there was a way to exploit that to ensure he couldn't hurt Tiffany, or me, any further. The next morning, I decided to visit Josh's favorite bar. If I was going to confront him, I needed to do it in person. Plus, I wanted to see the man behind the messages, the one Tiffany had dragged into this mess. As I walked in, the smell of stale beer and the murmur of conversations hit me. I spotted Josh at the end of the bar, nursing a drink and looking every bit the desperate man Ashley had described. I took a deep breath and approached him. "Josh, right?" He looked up, surprise evident in his eyes. "Yeah, who's asking?" "Name's Brad. Tiffany and I were supposed to be friends." Josh's face paled slightly, a flicker of guilt crossing his features. "I didn't know Tiffany and you were friends." "Look, Brad, I'm not sure what you want." I leaned in, keeping my voice low. "I know about the money you owe and the people you're dealing with." Ashley told me everything. He swallowed hard. "I don't know what to tell you. I'm trying to sort things out." I nodded slowly, feigning understanding while plotting my next move. "I get it. But you need to be careful, Josh. Those guys aren't messing around." As I turned to leave, I felt a pang of satisfaction. This was my chance. If Josh was scared, maybe I could leverage that to ensure he stayed out of Tiffany's life for good. Little did I know, this decision would spiral out of control in ways I couldn't have anticipated. Later that day, I started digging deeper into Josh's situation. I found out the name of the gang leader he owed money to, Vince Marino, and learned that he was notorious for his ruthless methods. The more I learned, the more I realized the severity of Josh's predicament. Vince wasn't someone you could bargain with, he demanded results, not excuses. Fueled by a mix of anger and determination, I decided to take matters into my own hands. If Vince wanted what he wanted, maybe I could find a way to stop him without getting too personally involved. But the lines between right and wrong were already blurring, and I was stepping into a world that thrived on chaos and violence. That night, I received an unexpected call from Ashley. Her voice was shaky, almost fearful. Brad, please, you need to come. It's urgent. Without hesitation, I drove to her place. When I arrived, I found her pacing the living room, clearly distressed. What's going on, Ashley? She grabbed my arm, her eyes wide with panic. It's Vince. He's not happy with Josh's delays. He's planning something big, and Josh is terrified. I think Vince wants to make an example out of him. My heart raced. This was bigger than I thought. If Vince was planning something drastic, Josh was in real danger. But what did that mean for me? How could I use this situation to my advantage without becoming a target myself? Ashley took a deep breath. I didn't know who else to turn to. Tiffany suggested you might be able to help. I felt a surge of frustration. Tiffany had manipulated everyone around her, using even her so-called friends to get what she wanted. But now, with Josh in the crosshairs, maybe I had the leverage I needed. I sat down, trying to formulate a plan. All right, Ashley. Tell me everything you know about Vince's plans. Maybe there's a way to intervene before things get worse. As Ashley detailed Vince's intentions, I realized the depth of the situation. Vince wasn't just looking to collect his debt, he wanted to send a message to anyone who crossed him. Josh was just the latest in a long line of disappointments. Determined to protect Josh and take control of the situation, I decided it was time to confront Vince directly. It was risky, but leaving things as they were would only lead to more chaos, for Josh, for Tiffany, and for me. That evening, I gathered the courage to visit Vince's known hangout spot, a seedy warehouse on the outskirts of town. The place reeked of danger, and the atmosphere was thick with tension. I walked in, my heart pounding, and made my way to the back where Vince usually held his meetings. Vince was there, surrounded by his entourage, his presence commanding and intimidating. When he saw me, he raised an eyebrow, clearly not expecting company. Brad, right? What brings you here? I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. I'm here about Josh. I heard you're not happy with the way things are going. Vince smirked, leaning back in his chair. Is that so? And what are you proposing? I glanced around, knowing any misstep could end badly. I want to help. Let's find a way to settle this without anyone getting hurt. He laughed, a harsh, mocking sound. You think you can just waltz in here and negotiate? This isn't some playground dispute, Brad. These are real people with real lives. I met his gaze, refusing to back down. I know exactly what's at stake. Josh is scared, and so am I. Let's find a solution that works for both of us. For a moment, there was silence. Then Vince leaned forward, his expression thoughtful. You're playing a dangerous game, Brad. But maybe there's something you can offer that I need. I nodded, hoping I could keep up the act. What do you need? Vince tapped his fingers on the table, contemplating. There are some assets I need to secure, some deals that require a trustworthy person. Help me with that, and maybe I can work something out for Josh. I realized I was in too deep. This wasn't just about revenge anymore, it was about survival. I had to find a way out without losing myself in the process. As Vince laid out his terms, I knew that every move from here on out would have consequences. The revenge I had sought was morphing into something far more complicated and dangerous. But there was no turning back now. I was committed, whether I liked it or not, and the path I had chosen was leading me further into a darkness I never imagined. Man, where do I even begin? If you've been following along, you know things have gone from bad to worse pretty damn quickly. After my unsettling meeting with Vince Marino, I thought I could handle whatever came next. Spoiler alert, I was dead wrong. A few days after my confrontation with Vince, things started to escalate. I was juggling my everyday life with these newfound criminal obligations, and it was tearing me apart. I mean, here I am, just trying to protect Josh and maybe get a leg up on Tiffany, and I'm getting sucked into this seedy underworld. Not exactly the revenge plan I had in mind. Vince kept pushing me to deliver on his requests. The first task was relatively simple: intercept a shipment of contraband that was supposed to go through a local warehouse. Easy enough, right? I thought I could handle it without drawing too much attention. But things didn't go as planned. I arrived at the warehouse late one night, armed with nothing but my phone and a misguided sense of bravery. As I approached the loading dock, I saw Vince's men already there, surveilling the area. My heart pounded. This was bigger than I anticipated. Before I could back out, one of the guys spotted me. Panic set in as they surrounded me, weapons drawn. "Looks like we got ourselves a volunteer," one of them sneered. I tried to explain that I was just trying to help, but they weren't having it. They forced me inside the warehouse, where Vince was waiting with a smug grin. "Good to see you took initiative, Brad," he said, eyeing me up and down. "But we need more than just muscle. We need someone who can handle the heat if things go south." I swallowed hard, realizing the gravity of the situation. "What exactly do you need me to do?" Vince leaned in, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "We need to send a message to our competitors. There's a rival gang leader, Marcus, the Shark, Thompson, who's been encroaching on our territory. I want you to eliminate him." Quietly. My stomach churned. Eliminate? Are you kidding me? This was crossing a line I never thought I'd approach. But then I thought of Josh. If I could take out Marcus, maybe it would send a clear message to anyone messing with Tiffany or me. The lines between right and wrong were already blurred, but this felt like stepping into pure darkness. "I can't do that," I protested, trying to back away. But Vince's men tightened their grip, and he placed a cold hand on my shoulder. "Think about it, Brad. Refuse, and Josh's situation gets even worse. Marcus doesn't play nice, and neither do we." I left that warehouse with a heavy heart and a mind racing with conflicting thoughts. I knew I couldn't go through with killing someone, but the pressure was mounting. Vince was holding Josh's life in his hands, and I was running out of options. Meanwhile, Tiffany was oblivious to the chaos her infidelity had unleashed. She continued her facade of the perfect wife, throwing subtle digs my way and flaunting her relationship with Josh whenever she thought I wasn't looking. Her lies were getting more intricate, and her behavior more erratic. It was like she thrived on the turmoil she'd created. One night, as I was grappling with whether to follow through on Vince's demand, I received an anonymous tip. Someone had hacked into Vince's network and sent me a message: "Stop this before it's too late. Josh didn't deserve this." I stared at the screen, my mind a whirlwind of emotions. Was this a genuine plea, or another layer of deception from Tiffany? Either way, it forced me to reconsider my path. The revenge I sought had spiraled out of control, and now innocent lives were at stake. In a desperate attempt to regain control, I decided to confront Vince one last time. If I was going to keep Josh safe, I needed to find a way out of this mess. But Vince wasn't the type to let go easily. When I arrived at his office, he was waiting with that same smug grin, flanked by his loyal henchmen. "Back so soon?" he asked, circling me like a predator. "I was hoping you'd see reason." I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. "I can't do it, Vince. I won't kill Marcus. There has to be another way." He laughed, a dark, hollow sound. "You think you have a choice? You owe me, Brad. And debt is a powerful thing." Before I could respond, the door swung open, and in walked Josh, looking disheveled and terrified. "Vince, we need to talk," he pleaded. My heart sank. Seeing Josh here, in the lion's den, was a gut punch. I wanted to protect him, but Vince wasn't making it easy. In that moment, I realized that my quest for revenge had not only cost Josh his life but was now threatening my own. As tensions rose and tempers flared, an unexpected explosion rocked the building. Shouts filled the air as chaos erupted. Vince's rival gang had caught wind of the situation and decided to strike. Gunfire erupted from all sides, and the room descended into pandemonium. In the confusion, Vince grabbed Josh and made a run for it, dragging me along. Bullets whizzed past, and panic set in. We barely escaped with our lives, but not without consequences. Vince was gone, and Josh was traumatized, blaming me for dragging him into this nightmare. As we sat in a dingy motel room later that night, Josh looked at me with a mix of fear and resentment. "You wanted revenge, Brad. Now look where it got us." I felt a pang of guilt and sorrow. My actions had spiraled out of control, and the pain I'd caused was immeasurable. The man I once trusted and the wife I thought I knew were both gone, replaced by a ruthless desire for vengeance that had consumed us all. I knew there was no turning back now. The path I'd chosen had cost too much, and the fallout was only just beginning. But one thing was clear, I wasn't done yet. If anything, this was just the beginning of a deeper, darker journey into revenge that would leave nothing untouched. Alright, here we go, final part. Buckle up, because this is where everything either comes together or completely falls apart. Spoiler, it's the latter, and I'm not proud of a single second of it. After that chaotic night with Vince and the rival gang, I thought things couldn't get any worse. But life has a twisted sense of humor. Josh was traumatized, and honestly, so was I. We barely escaped with our lives, but the emotional scars were already deep. I knew I couldn't keep going down this dark path without losing myself entirely. A few days later, Vince resurfaced. I thought I had outsmarted him, but he wasn't done. He cornered me at a convenience store, his eyes burning with that same ruthless glare. "You think you can just play both sides and walk away?" he snarled. "You owe me, Brad. And debts like ours don't get forgotten." I tried to reason with him, to find some semblance of humanity in this nightmare, but Vince was beyond that. He wanted Marcus dead, and he wasn't leaving until it happened. Desperation set in. I realized that to protect myself and maybe salvage what was left of my sanity, I had to take drastic measures. I decided to confront Marcus, the Shark, Thompson directly. This guy was a legend in the underground scene, known for his brutality and cunning. Meeting him meant stepping into the lion's den, but I had no choice. If I didn't act, both Josh and I were doomed. I tracked Marcus down to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. Walking in, the tension was palpable. Marcus was surrounded by his crew, but he seemed oddly calm, almost expecting me. "Brad, I hear you want to talk," he said, his voice smooth but edged with steel. I didn't hold back. "Vince wants you gone. I'm here to make sure that happens." He laughed, a low, menacing sound. "You? You're just a man scorned. Vince has bigger plans for you than you realize." Before I could respond, gunfire erupted. It was a trap. Shots flew everywhere, and I ducked for cover, heart racing. In the chaos, I saw Josh trying to escape, but one of Marcus's guys grabbed him. "No!" I shouted, sprinting towards them. But it was too late. A bullet found Josh, and he crumpled to the ground. Time seemed to slow as I knelt beside him, tears streaming down my face. "Josh, man, I'm so sorry. I never wanted it to end like this." He looked up at me, pain and betrayal in his eyes. "You were just trying to survive, Brad. Don't let this destroy you." He took his last breath, and everything went silent. I held him there, feeling the weight of my actions crashing down on me. In my quest for revenge, I had cost an innocent man his life. And worst of all, I hadn't even stopped. I was still tangled in this web of lies and violence. Vince didn't let me off that easily. With Josh gone, my debt to him doubled. He made it clear that my actions had consequences beyond what I could handle. I was now a marked man, hunted by both Vince and his rivals. My life was in shambles, and there was no turning back. Back home, Tiffany was a mess. The truth about her affair had leaked, and she was facing social ostracization, legal troubles, and the collapse of her career. But the damage was already done. Our marriage was irreparably broken, a toxic shell of what it once was. She tried to blame me for everything, twisting the narrative to paint herself as the victim, but no one was buying it anymore. I moved out, trying to distance myself from the chaos. But the ghosts of my actions followed me everywhere. The police were on my tail, Vince's men were still lurking, and the weight of Josh's death haunted my every waking moment. I had become the very monster I despised, and there was no redemption in sight. One night, as I sat alone in a rundown motel room, I reflected on the spiral I'd fallen into. My quest for revenge had cost me everything, my marriage, my peace of mind, and the life of someone who never deserved to die. I realized too late that revenge only breeds more pain, and in trying to punish Tiffany, I had only become a prisoner of my own rage. In the end, there were no winners. Just a broken man left to pick up the pieces of a life destroyed by betrayal and vengeance. If I could go back, I'd choose a different path, one where I didn't let anger consume me. But hindsight is all I have now, and the scars are a constant reminder of the darkness that lies within us all.